Welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. 30 days to recover from burnout and reclaim your vitality. With your hosts, Morgan B. and Lucy Ann Chard.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. I'm Lucy Ann Chard and I'm here with my co-host Morgan B. Hey Morgan.
Hi.
And today we are very, very excited to introduce our guest to you, Tara Jackson. Tara is the author of Embodied, a self-care guide for sensitive souls, and a holistic wellbeing coach who works with people to help them with seasonal and cyclical self-care, self-love, reconnecting with themselves, and being fully embodied so they can thrive in today's fast-paced world. Tara, thank you so much for being here with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you both so much. It's honestly such an honor, and I'm really amazing you guys are doing this, so thank you.
Yay, it's such a pleasure. So Tara, tell us a little bit more about you and the work that you're creating in the world.
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, I'm a wellbeing coach, and my mission is just to really help people to connect with themselves, to figure out what it is that they need. Well-being is not this blanket thing that, do one thing and you're going to be healthy. It's about, learning yourself, your lifestyle, your patterns, your habits, your behaviors, everything that fits into your life to make you thrive in the world. And we go into, with everyone is different that I work with, and it goes into detail, with the person, maybe looking at their menstrual cycle, for example, with women. The seasons of the year affect us, what we do for our living affects us, and it's just really getting people to connect with that and be aware that there might be a difference between them and someone else, and what does that look like for them? How does that work? And how can you look after yourself fully so that you can be the most you can be in the world and feel amazing in your body? And that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Beautiful. So really about knowing the self and the awareness of yourself and who you are being in the world. So can you share with us your experience of burnout and healing burnout, and how you overcame that process?
Of course. So burnout's a funny thing. It's a gradual thing that kind of creeps up on you, and I think that's just something to notice, because I didn't realize this, that, when it was coming and creeping up on me. It starts with stress that you're not managing very well. And then this led to coping techniques for me, which were a lot of addictions. So alcohol really, really played a huge part in my life. I was drinking heavily, maybe 4 nights a week, possibly 5. And then sleeping, numbing, escaping in any way possible, just to deal with the stress and to escape from my life. And just this constant cycle of it. And then it led to just real despondency, despair, really hating what I was doing in the world, hating my life, hating myself. Depression, that was just another side thing that came from it, and really just not wanting to be here. I then got debilitating diarrhea, digestive issues. I was taking taxis to work because I didn't know if I'd make it to the bathroom if I was on the underground, for example. It just got worse and worse and worse. And my body, I just was disconnected from it. There was just no connection there whatsoever. And I didn't even know how to feel. I just knew how to escape feeling and how to cut myself off, take a pill to numb it. And it just got to that point where something had to change for me, and I just, it had to be a life change for me. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be for everyone, but it did for me. So I quit my job, and I changed it at first. I started going part-time, and then eventually quit, and then just realized I had to start changing my life and putting me first, and changing my habits, my lifestyle, quitting drinking, at least for a good chunk of time. And just starting to adopt self-care practices, basic small things like eating well, moving my body, resting, just doing those little things that started to make a difference overall. But it was definitely a gradual process. And it took time. And it's, even since then, the one time I've gone back and forth, and every time it just gets less and less, or and I get back to my self-care, a bit quicker. But yeah, it's a process, I think. So kind of that sort of sums it up, I guess.
I love that. I think it's so powerful, and I love the truth of what you're saying, because it is a process. And, I think that really speaks to some of the myths that we've seen about recovering from burnout, that, like, take a week off, you'll be fine, or just rest over the weekend, you'll be okay then. It's not.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah. So I love how you speak about that. And I'd really like to hear more about your experience and your knowledge or wisdom around seasonal and cyclical self-care, and, how that led you to reconnecting to the relationship with your body and your life.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. So I grew up on the equator, so minimal seasons, pretty much, rainy season, dry season, but pretty warm all year round. And moving to the UK almost 20 years ago was just a shock. I was expecting to be able to work out really, really hard, go for it, eat salads in the winter. Why wasn't my body doing what I could do in the summer in the winter? And then I get so frustrated with myself, and it would just be a vicious cycle of, self-deprecation, not doing what I wanted, and just loads and loads of negative self-talk, just it wasn't happening. And I started looking into it, researching, and realizing that no, my body wanted to rest in the winter. So these natural feelings of wanting to hibernate they're so normal. And allowing myself to do that, and allowing myself to be more gentle, to slow down, to do more nourishing, restorative things, which then actually made me feel better. So even though I wasn't pushing and doing what I thought I should be, I was doing the opposite. I actually felt better for it, which led me onto this journey of looking into my cycles, my menstrual cycle as well, realizing we have a spring, summer, autumn, winter within that monthly.
Yeah.
And then the seasons of the year. And it's just this, just a whole kind of journey of exploration. And I just love it. Just exploring it and seeing, the differences that it makes with, to my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I just sort of thought of that. Do you feel, so growing up in like a warmer climate, do you feel it was more of a slower pace to life versus, maybe areas that have 4 seasons or cooler temperatures? Well, and I'm just kind of seeing, maybe is that something, because I wonder if, or is it more the fast paced life? Is that more kind of, North America, UK, Europe? Is that kind of, I just sort of thought of that. Is that so? Do you see that at all in a pattern of the world?
I think I do, but then also, the West has crept into so many parts of the world that there's still that fast-paced, go culture in the workplace, mainly, even in Kenya. And I'm not in that environment yet. I'm actually going to maybe do some work out there in that environment to help with it, because it is creeping there. But I think as a whole, the tropics, it is slower paced. I've just got back from there, and I've noticed, oh my God, London is crazy comparatively, the pace of life. But I think, it depends a bit. It depends what's come over from the West in certain areas. But as a whole, I think things are generally slower. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
But also, I think how you feel in the summertime as well. There's more of a, I think there's a softening. There's a slower kind of pace of life. Or there is to me. I don't know. Maybe this is my experience of it, and it's like that more of the year, I guess.
100%. I think for me, in my experience as well, really learning to honor the seasons in terms of my own energy levels has been absolutely vital in healing and coming back to vitality. And I'd like to hear more of that, hear more about that from you, in terms of, you were saying earlier, which I thought was so beautiful, that you didn't actually know how to feel in your body. You knew how to numb yourself, but you didn't know how to feel. So if someone, one of our listeners or our community members is experiencing the same thing, what would you suggest to them?
So, as a starting point, is getting to know the signs and signals it's giving me. So, these pains, aches, my diarrhea, my body was screaming at me, what are you doing? Something is not right here. Stop ignoring this. And it might start as headaches. It might start as, a little tweak or a tingle. but just start to pay attention to those little signs. That's something. It's not just to be masked with a painkiller, you know, especially if it's persistent. And get to know, you know, it's stopping, it's the slowing down, even just, you know, little and often, and feeling into that. What is it? What is that saying to me? You know, and there's not one answer. It's a journey of exploration here, and you kind of feeling into your body, feeling into what that might mean, and then making connections. It's self-analysis, I suppose, connections between what you're doing or people you're seeing, and really just getting to know it slowly. That's how I'd say.
Thank you. I really love that. And I would love to, if you could speak more about creating space as well. I know you talk about that a little bit, and how there's the magic in the spaces in between, which I really love that. And how, you know, someone going through burnout or recovering from burnout, how to be more aware of creating that space, or what that looks like.
And it's not easy, especially when we're conditioned to fill every space, to, you know, to do something in every moment, to be productive in every, you know, every moment of our time. And it's, again, it's a journey, and it's a practice, and it's boundaries ultimately. You know, where can you say no to something? And if, you know, I'm not going to say, you know, go from one extreme to the other, just take those little steps. Where can you cut out a few things, or give yourself an afternoon, even just start to create little pockets of space in your day that works for you, and then it will kind of increase. And that's what that's what it did for me. It went from, you know, little afternoon to, you know, now I try and have as much space as possible. I've gone the other way maybe, but yeah, it's like just do what you can with, you know, with where you're at and what you have, but you have to sort of really consciously put those boundaries in place, you know, to start. And otherwise, you know, it's just not going to change, and we have to want to do that for ourselves. I really do believe that.
There's something uncomfortable when we first start putting boundaries in place, isn't there? And it's something about giving ourselves permission to be strong in that way. And how did that play out in your life? Did you find it difficult at first? I mean, talk to me a little bit about how you kind of stepped into that space of being strong in that way.
Oh, I found it really, really hard in the beginning. Oh my goodness. I had to say, I actually kind of even used little white lies in the beginning, saying I'm sick, and, you know, or, you know, I couldn't make it because I had something else on. And that was my way of giving myself that without feeling guilt and all these things I did, because I just felt the guilt so much, and obligation and things. So I did do that in the beginning to create that space. And then slowly over time, and it kind of gradually crept up, but it got a bit easier. I still struggle with it occasionally, don't get me wrong, or I'll say, I will, the occasional white lie will come out if I know I need to create that space. But that's what kind of worked for me. And I'm sure you guys have other suggestions here as well, but it's hard. I definitely could think that to do that for yourself.
Did you find that your relationships, the relationships around you, shifted as you created those boundaries? And can you talk to us a bit more about that, or your experience?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my friendship circle's totally different to what it was when I was working in that life. Absolutely. I think I maybe have one friend still from then, you know, and actually friends today are the ones that have boundaries, respect boundaries, and need space. And it just kind of it aligns up with where you're at. I think as you start to say what you need and want, people then reflect that, you know, and you end up, you know, having friends that need and want the same thing and totally respect it. So it has changed, and it was a gradual process, but yeah, it absolutely has changed.
You know, we talk about that in the sense of decluttering, you know, and that's also about making space, is decluttering your life, both in a physical sense, but then also an emotional sense. And that, I think, is one of the things that we don't often speak about when we're talking about burnout and recovery, is the decluttering of the relationships that no longer serve you. That's a good point.
It's a big one, and it's a hard one. It really is. And it does get easier. and knowing that, I guess, some friendships, well, you know, the season, reason, or lifetime perhaps, and
Yes.
maybe it's time to just, you know, to acknowledge what they were for, and let them move on. And and it is very liberating as well as
So did you have a support system around while you were going through burnout, or is it something that you kind of wished you did have if you didn't have the support system? Or, you know, is there some way that you would love to experience support when you were going, yes, when you were previously going through this burnout?
I probably had bits of support here and there, which was kind of a bit more self-imposed. I actually did see a therapist for a while, which was incredibly supportive, just for a few weeks, just to have that kind of space to, I'll get it all out. But a lot of it for me was actually watching videos online, reading articles, really just finding that support through groups online and things as well. Just seeing other people relating to that and going, okay, it's not just me. I'm not alone here. And just allowing it to unfold. But yeah, there wasn't a great amount I did. It's interesting. I don't know how I would change it now, but I think, reaching out is always, and just knowing you're not alone and there is a way through this, and you will be okay. And that's the biggest thing, I think.
That's beautiful. I love that. I want to talk a little bit about your book, Embodied, a self-care guide for sensitive souls. So it's out now and available to buy on Amazon, which is very exciting. Congratulations. So let's talk a little bit about the process of creative writing and the process of writing this book for you, and how the writing of it contributed to your healing journey.
Yeah, so I mean, the beginning part is my story, basically, and going through addictions, in particular, eating disorders, things like that, and to getting to the point where I had to change my life because of all the health issues I was feeling, as well as personal circumstances. And then the second part is the self-care actions and things I did and took over that time to kind of get myself back into me. And so the writing was a bit like having a therapist in some ways. It was just a complete getting it out onto paper. And actually writing it, you have to feel it. You have to go through those feelings. So some of it had just happened and it was like a story in my head. But to write it and to get into it, I had to get into it and feel it. And that was something, actually, maybe the first time I'd actually done that. So again, I had to go into my body and feel the stuff, and I healed. It was incredibly cathartic, and the writing process, and not all of it went in the book, but just that process was incredibly healing. So writing is such a tool for me to connect and to get stuff out and to process, absolutely, and be present with myself.
Oh, awesome. Yes, I do like to write. I found that I didn't write as much for the last few years, and I'm starting to write again. Are there other tools and resources you would suggest for our listeners that are experiencing burnout? Maybe if they're not, some may use writing or journaling, but are there other suggestions that you'd have as well?
I really do think that talking to someone, or having someone that gets it and understands, is a huge thing, because just that connection is a huge thing that we crave as human beings as well. And knowing that you're supported and not alone, it's such a relief. If I can feel it in my body, almost like it's like that, just knowing that support is there. It's such a big, however that shows up, whether it's someone you trust or a coach or a therapist or whatever, whatever resonates with you and your budget, of course. But then also, it's actually, I really, really do think it's, there's a couple of things. So basic self-care. So really, the small things, like what are you putting into your body and how are you moving your body? And this is little, not going for huge, drastic changes. Just what little things can you do to nourish yourself, to feel good? Just slowly start to feed your body what it needs, because there's such a connection between what we put into ourselves and how we feel as well. And that, that will heal it slowly over time. And then also I just think trying to find what your joy is in this life, reconnecting with why, what brings you joy, and this again is a process, but what lights you up, all that, your creativity, because we're here to express. I really do believe in when we're doing things in life that bring us that, then you feel so much more, you can be more as well, so however that kind of that process goes to get yourself to that, but just reconnecting with what you maybe loved doing as a child, planning things that bring you joy, you know, and starting little again, but just finding those things. So there's a few other things I would suggest. Yeah.
I love that. I love hearing that. It's making me smile just as you say that, because it's one of the biggest things we find with, you know, with our community members, and certainly from my own experience as well, is I couldn't remember the last time I had fun. That was a huge thing. You know, it's like, when did you last have fun, Lucy? I don't know.
Wow.
You know, reconnecting to joy and allowing the playfulness to come through, I think is such a, and because, you know, as you say, playfulness will be different for everyone.
Yeah.
One person's playfulness may be playing outside and playing a sport or something. Another will be reading a book quietly, and whatever it is. So tell us a little bit more. So currently we're in the Northern Hemisphere. We're in the midst of autumn into winter. We're almost at the winter, the longest night.
Solstice.
And yes, thank you. I slipped my mind there. And I was wondering if you could give us, what are your tips as to how we could feel more embodied in this season that we're in?
Oh, so it comes back to the similar things. It's movement and nourishment for me always, but seasonal. So yin yoga, restorative, just, you know, deep stretches into your body, and getting, you know, even doing a body massage perhaps as well, like you're feeling your body, nourishing it, looking after it. And then you know, winter foods like vegetables and soups and stews and things, I find, you know, they just make me feel more grounded and more present in myself as well. So yeah, really just honoring that, the time of year, and how you look after your body in alignment with that. I think those are two big things. And rest. I mean, we're supposed to hibernate, in my personal opinion, at this time of year, and one day we should.
Yes, absolutely. I'm up for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly. Just do less. I think say no more, and take those moments to rest when you can. Like and be okay with that. That's a big thing, and that's, again, hard sometimes in the beginning, but know that that's okay to be okay with that.
And can you also talk a little bit more about, for our female listeners, about the menstrual cycle and how that would kind of, because that's within the, you know, each month or each 28 days within that seasonal cycle as well. So what would that look like?
Definitely. So I think we're all different as well. So, you know, we will have, you know, times in our cycle when we're more outward, more outgoing, and then times when we need to be more inward. I mean, it usually corresponds to when you're menstruating that you're more inward, and then when you get to ovulation, you're more outward. But every woman is different. So I really, really recommend tracking it and getting to know your body. Like, for example, I'll explain it for myself. So I actually go into kind of my winter phase, even just before menstruation. And I'm really inward, and I get, you know, I can't be around people so much. I'm more self-critical. I'm really need the quiet, the rest. I notice I want to eat more and not do anything. And then actually, as I begin to menstruate, my energy rises pretty quickly. And I feel like I'm going into a spring phase, and I start wanting to be more active, more outward. I've got ideas coming. And then slowly after that in my cycle, then I am more outward, and I try and plan to do things, you know, usually around that time of the month as well, because I'm more happy to be seen and things like that. So, and I'm happy to socialize. And then again, it goes back into the autumn after that, and I then start to go back more inward. But also noticing, you know, each cycle, your cycle in the summer and your cycle in the winter, that will be different too. So, you know, obviously seasonal weather changes will affect your internal cycle too. And you might even be more outward in your winter in the summer, whereas your winter in the winter, you'll be even more inward. So, you know, really, it's just a journey of exploration, I guess. And it's, that's kind of it. But getting to know your body and how you work with it. And also each cycle will be different. So not having any fixed expectations on it.
I think that's so important, not to have fixed expectations. You know, that's one of the things that I think we struggle with as a modern society, is, you know, having a fixed plan. Everything needs to have a plan, and then that's it. You know, like, I know my body, this is the way it works, and that's not always the case. So I really like the flexibility of what you're saying, and how we kind of go with the flow. I think
And
that's a beautiful philosophy.
Thank you. And I can tell you that that's the hardest thing. I was such a, it has to be this, I've got my workout schedule, I'm doing this, and I'm going to be perfectly fine and healthy. No. The body has totally different plans. It doesn't want any of that. And allowing that. And I'm still on this journey completely, and figuring out what I need, coming back just from the equator a few days ago, going, what the hell's going on? And learning that and adjusting and being kind and realizing things take so much longer than we want them to with the body. Really allowing that time and space for it to adjust, for it to figure out where it's at, and to catch up in some ways with the mind. So definitely.
Yeah. I in my mind, I was thinking of, I wish the world was more knowledgeable about all these things, and that we could honor each other and our flow and our cycles of life, whether we have a menstrual cycle or not. And so do you find that you're meeting more and more people that are willing to go with the flow versus, because we do have a lot of that in like a lot of the product got to be productive and got to be planned, and it's very much strong conditioning from cultural conditioning from do you find that you're finding more and more people that are opening up to being more in the flow of life?
I definitely do. I think we need a culture change in society. And actually one of my missions is to bring menstrual cycle awareness into the workplace.
Okay,
I really, really want to do that. So this is something that's coming up for me strongly for next year onwards. And,
love it.
And if men had a menstrual cycle, things would be very different. So they would not be able to deal with it.
Absolutely.
We know this.
Yes. Yes.
But women are becoming more aware of it and accepting. And I think that's the first step. And then, I think it's going to start to ripple, but there definitely have to be some big changes from culture within society, definitely.
Yeah. I know when I worked in a corporate setting that it was very challenging for me to communicate it, if there was something that I needed, especially during my menstrual cycle, to communicate to my manager, who was a male, what I was feeling, what I was going through, and there wasn't really that understanding or that, I just felt like I couldn't communicate exactly what was going on.
Absolutely. There needs to be a big change, and men need to know it as much as women. Completely, they really do.
So would you say that this, what we're speaking about here is women really speaking up for their truth and standing in their power? Would you say that counts as self-care?
Absolutely. Yes, completely. Yeah.
So let's speak a little bit more about that, because I know that you're kind of, I consider you the self-care expert. I love your Instagram posts, and there's a lot of, you have a lot of wisdom to share on this topic. And I know that self-care, the concept of it goes a lot deeper than, Epsom salt baths and that kind of thing, which is fine. Those things are all good. But I'd like to hear more about that, about the depth and how we can really begin to embrace and embody self-care.
Yeah, it's creating a life that we want to live, that we want to love living, I think, and yes, it's feeling good in your stuff and all the, the other stuff, but it's deep inner love, inner, what does that part of me need, and how can I nurture and nourish that on an ongoing basis, on a really deep level? It's, the words aren't even coming, but it's this really deep kind of knowing of yourself and what you need there, and then that can translate into different areas of your life, relationships, your career, your well-being, every part of your life, but really coming at it from a kind of like a deep level that looks at your like what you're here to do, your life on this planet, and not just how it feels, bubble baths and stuff.
No, I hear you. And I think that sometimes, again, coming back to what we were saying earlier, that can be uncomfortable, because it can feel uncomfortable at first to speak up, to speak about your whole self,
Yes, that's it.
your cycles and your seasons. And I'm with you 100% on changing the conversation around that and bringing it into a more mainstream
I got
realm.
goosebumps when you said that. Absolutely. Yeah, such goosebumps. And yeah, it's society, you know, there's such a very surface level approach, a band-aid approach, where let's deal with that little bit over here, not this big cavern of other stuff. And you need to look at the whole picture, like you're saying. And I love that I got such goosebumps. Yeah.
And listening to you speak, I realized that once I got to know myself better and have a better awareness of what I needed, or what self-care looked like for me, I was able to communicate that, or it was, I mean, you know, and it's a process, but it became easier for me to communicate to others what it is that I need, and also boundaries and all those things. And yeah, that's been so great. I understand you have a gift for our listeners, and would you like to share that?
I do, yes. So it's a self-care workbook, and it's designed to just help you look into different areas in your life, you know, your relationships, your career, your family, these sort of the different areas in your life, kind of asking some questions, inquiry, and then figure out which area, and asks you to pick your top 3 and then go into one of them. And it will help you come up with some self-care for yourself on a deeper level within that one area. And it asks you then, it's for you to basically act on and look after yourself for a month, then you can change it. So really diving deep into one area of your life and your self-care, and then changing it so that it sticks and it goes in a bit more deeply than just, and it's for you, it's personal for you, what you need.
Absolutely amazing. Well, that just sounds super. So we will put all of those details in the show notes so that everyone can go and check it out. And I highly encourage you to do so. It's called Self-Care Changes Everything. Create a personal plan to live the life of your dreams. How absolutely gorgeous. So Tara, we have a question that we like to ask all of our speakers to bring the interview to a close. And that question is this: if you could send a loving and supportive message to your younger self from 20 odd years ago, what would you say to her?
Gosh, I tell her that she doesn't need to do everything all at once, that it's, you know, it's all unfolding perfectly, and just allow it to be that. Yeah, she just needs to slow down and enjoy it. Slow down and enjoy it, and let it unfold, because it is all perfect. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Tara. Thank you. This has been beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of your insights and your stories and your resources with the audience and with all of us here. And we just want to thank you for being a part of the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara.
Thank you both so much as well.